Hello, everyone. It's the Wine Hour, the talk show that removes your wine anxiety. A warm welcome to all of you. Starting with Symphony Concertante for flute, two violins, and cello in G major, please. Allegro Spiritoso by Johann Christian Bach. He was the 18th child of Johann Sebastian Bach. So you could say he was kind of prolific on all fronts. Most of today's show's music have been selected by our special guest, Philana Bouvier, and will be available as a playlist on Spotify. 3 weeks ago, we started the Wine Hour in the middle of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Today, we live in a different world, and all our thoughts go to the people of Ukraine. People want to support the country because they are appalled by the terrible human toll, but also because the fight is about self-determination, democracy, and independence. If many are so keen to defend these values, why haven't things changed closer to home? What about equality, fairness, respect? Then I thought of our special guest and all the many women and minority leaders realizing what they must have gone through to reach where they are. People cheer when you're on the top, but it's a different song on the way up. Real change is hard because it requires us to confront who we are. This morning, by chance, I was reading this passage. What the nation does is done also by each individual. And so long as the individual continues to do it, the nation will do likewise. Only change in the attitude of the individual can initiate a change in the psychology of the nation. Carl Jung wrote these words in December 1916. But change is hard. Empathy is hard. Overcoming prejudice is hard. Ukrainians are giving up their lives for freedom and justice. Are people ready for the safer change to learn to live together? Because in the end, this is what makes us humans. Respect by Aretha Franklin. So here's the menu of today's show. First, in Uncorked.Jaime Araujo and Ray will argue about the question, do you prefer them old or young? And of course, we're talking about wine. Then in License to Taste, Tanisha will invite you to discover the wines of Ukraine. In the Wine Minute, she will tell you her story of an American in Paris. And finally, in Have a Drink with Me, I'll have the pleasure to welcome our special guest, Philana Bouvier. Now, before we start, let me introduce you to today's cast. I've been really trying, okay, there's a bit of a Motown theme, as this is one of the favorite style of our guests, starting with the incomparable Marvin Gaye and Let's Get It On. Coming from St. Helena, it's a marvelous honor, privilege, and pleasure to welcome the truly inspiring Philana Bouvier.
Thank you. What an introduction. Thank you.
What are you drinking?
I am drinking our Legras Haas champagne, so Blanc de Blanc from Chouy, which is tasting fabulous. And I love champagne. For anyone that knows me, I think champagne is an everyday occasion and not just a celebratory one. But yes. Today is very special because I get to spend it with all of you. And I see so many familiar faces on this. So I'm grateful.
Thank you. And now. They're back. It's the moment you all have been waiting for. They make wine interesting, fun, controversial, even funky. Coming from our global virtual studio, the only and one and only Wine Dream Team. And today we're going to be starting in St. Helena, right next door to our guest. Okay, continuing on the Motown theme, Superstition and Happy Birthday by Stevie Wonder, our birthday lady, Jaime Araujo.
Hey, thank you.
How is our birthday lady doing?
Very well. Had a fabulous party on Friday and managed to bottle our Noisette 2019 today. So it's a good week.
Nice, nice. And now.
Gonna be some sweet sounds coming down on the night shift.
Night Shift by the Commodores, still in the US, working day and night from New York City, Mr. Ray Isle.
I think you've outdone yourself on this playlist. This is one of the winners for sure.
How are you? What are you drinking?
I'm gonna have to hide my head in shame because I'm drinking a La Croix lime flavored mineral water.
Fair
It's not
enough.
even mineral water. It's a sparkling zero. It says, I love the marketing: 0 calorie, 0 sweetener, 0 sodium, innocent. What does that mean? Innocent. It's apparently innocent.
You're not sinning, my
I
son,
mean-
by drinking this.
You're
gonna
far
go
from
home.
innocent, Ray.
Go home and sin later with a martini. So
But no prejudice. Anything, we accept everything in this show. Now, across the pond,
I need love, love to ease my mind. I need to find someone.
You Can Hurry Love by the Supremes, coming from London, the man for whom love is always at first sight, Mr. Akosh Forzcek. Good evening, Akosh.
Good evening, everyone.
Did you bring the big guns again?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. So what are you having?
Oh, yeah. What's the point otherwise, right?
Exactly. Exactly. And now.
ABC, easy as 1, 2, 3. All simple as flow, bring me ABC, 1, 2, 3.
ABC by the Jackson 5 from Paris. She makes wine as easy as ABC. Tanisha Townsend. Good evening, Tanisha.
Good evening. How are you?
I'm doing great. Seeing all of you. We're in a good mood now. Everything is fun.
We're here. Yeah.
We're good?
Yes,
In good
we're
spirit.
Mhm.
Before we start, just a couple of technical things. Please keep yourself muted and video off. If you want to ask questions, you can put them in the chat, or you can raise your hand and we'll put you live or just audio, whatever is convenient for you. Now, if everyone is ready, grab a glass of wine, innocent drink, champagne, water, tea, chai, whatever it is. A toast to all of you. Cheers and enjoy the show. Cheers. And here we go. Cinema in Fiamme by Ennio Morricone from the soundtrack of Nuovo Cinema Paradiso. Today's Uncorked is about young or old wines. Who wants to start?
That was a
don't rush. Okay,
No,
okay.
I knew Akash was gonna start.
While
I
you're
knew.
pulling your thoughts, I'm going to run a poll. Okay, and we look at the result afterwards. Okay, so
Doesn't matter.
I think my answer, to young or old wines is yes.
Absolutely. Well, although I have to say, after a certain age, it's quite interesting to discover how there is a convergence of taste. And I remember all my life, the first really old wine that I tried was a 1937, I think, Burgundy that was given to me as a gift, or maybe 34, I can't remember now. And I didn't know what to expect. And the wine was great. It was good. And then years later, I got a Côte Rôtie from that same era, and the two of them reminded me tremendously of each other. And the wines were very, very similar. I would have not been able to pretty much tell them apart, because after like 60, 70 years, the wines kind of become very similar in terms of taste. So
I had a super similar experience with Burgundy and Barolo.
Mhm.
They
Yeah,
actually
So
looked and
just to make it clear before we move on, okay?
Yes.
Old or young or both? Let's start. Philana.
I love both. But I just recently, Carlton and I actually just recently shared a beautiful bottle of 2005 de Jacques together with the business partner of ours, and it tasted beautifully. And if you also know any of our domestic wineries, if you take a look at Heitz, I mean, our older vintages are phenomenal. I mean, they're known for their ageability, and also the Burgess vintage wines are fantastic. Okay. So 2000, I like older a little bit, I think.
So 2005 is considered as an old vintage?
Well, for me it is. But we're talking in the 70s. I can understand in the 60s and 70s and 40s, yes, but I think for me it would be.
Right. Jamie, old or young?
You know, I think it's a very interesting question, because I think for a long time there was this idea that like young was sort of not as serious or not as important, and old was much more, you know, appreciating old wines or getting old wines was somehow, there was more kind of status attached to it, I guess, or sort of gravitas attached to it. And it's been really interesting. I love old wines personally. I actually really enjoy some of those different characteristics that come out, but I have a lot of people who come through our tasting room who just don't. They've tasted them before, they have the money to buy them. They might even have the space to cellar them, but they just don't like it. They prefer the fresher fruit flavors of a younger wine. They don't like the sort of earthiness or some of the more umami characteristics you can get in an older wine. And it's really fascinating to see the two things kind of becoming more equal in the mind of the consumer.
Okay. Ray?
Making sure that I'm unmuted. You know, I was going to say the best wines I've ever had have been wines that have some age on them and a reasonable amount of it. On the other hand, the most disappointing wines I've ever had have been wines with a fair amount of age on them too, because not even wines that in theory should grow old gracefully don't always do it. And so it's a tough call. I totally agree with Jamie that consumers, well, one, very few people have the ability or the real estate to age a lot of wine. I mean, Food and Wine has a giant consumer audience. The percentage of people who have anything beyond like a 50 bottle tiny wine fridge is minuscule. But at that said, if you have a 50 bottle tiny wine fridge, you can devote two shelves to aging wines. So it can be done, but it's not. I think the wine business occasionally forgets that most people just don't put wines in cellars.
Akos?
I think it's also something to think about is you always remember who you have the bottle of wine with, I think more. So it might not even matter if it's an older or younger or older bottle. It's really the person you get to have it with that you remember. That's probably more special, I think, that goes along with it.
I always try to have really old wines with really old people. And
so are you having more old wines or young?
Oh, so now I've got another year of age on me that we can actually share some of those old bottles.
Absolutely.
Hurrah.
I'm going to drink a really young bottle with you, Ray.
Yes.
So Akos, you talked about that experience of that old wines, but do you prefer in your daily life older or younger wines?
I think if you asked me the same question about 15, 20 years ago, I would have definitely answered you that I preferred every wine older. I believe that in the last decade and a half, especially in the European, in Europe, the European winemakers have made massive improvements in making their wines approachable at a young age. Whereas if you looked at, for example, I mean, when I first started drinking all the wines, it wasn't on my budget. It was when I was working for Hennessy. And in those days, I'm talking 92, 93, they were just starting the 55s, the 59s, 61s, because, anything younger than that wasn't considered to be undrinkable because the wines were harvested in, more lower maturity. They had a lot more oak in there and they overloaded the wines with all sorts of stuff. And then eventually it took 20 years for the wines to come around. You try today, the younger, even the Premier Grand Cru Classés, the top wines today, you drink a 2016 wines from Bordeaux. They are actually quite delicious now. you know. And yes, of course, I'm with Ray. You know, I have had the greatest experience of my life where like the, you know, very old wines, and in, you know, at tremendous disappointments as well. But young wines, in the way I look at wine is that is really, the big wines work, in my opinion, in the following way: is you drink them young, or you leave them for 15, 20 years, because they seem to go into hibernation, and then they come out as a completely different thing in the afterwards. So when Philana, for example, mentioned the 2005 Dujac, 2005, a lot of Burgundies are just not showing well at the moment. And it's been for such a long time. It's like 17 years later. And, you know, some of them will still be in hibernation. And it's really hard to do. And I asked this question from many winemakers: how do you know when they come out? They're like, just have 24 of them and keep opening them, and then you know when it comes out. You know?
So how do you define
Akash,
what is old and what is young? Is it 5 years, 10 years, 15, 30?
I think it's a very relative question, because it also depends on the wine, right?
Yeah.
If you're talking about a Sauvignon Blanc, 5 years might actually be considered relatively old. Whereas if you're talking about a Cabernet, be it Napa or Bordeaux or somewhere else, you know, you're probably 15, 20 years plus.
Yeah, it's very variable. I mean, you know,
I don't think there's a right or wrong answer, though. I think it's based on what you like, right? I think it's really based on what you like. And if you really like the wine, then you really like the wine, despite what the critics say. That's the one thing that makes
No
wine
offense,
so
Ray.
universal. It has to, right? Wine has to be
I'm
universal.
not, I don't rate wines. I just write about it.
But I think, to Akash's point, though, it has been a really important piece of the evolution of winemaking, even here in Napa Valley, to be able to create wines that can age for a very long time and are approachable young as well. So we can actually cater to both publics. One thing that I think I never realized until I did have the great good fortune to have a lot of older wines is that they're much easier on your body. So wines with sort of 15, 20 or more years on them, I find the next day, I am much brighter for the same quantity of wine consumed versus young wines.
Red specifically, or both?
Both, actually, both. And obviously part of it is alcohol, because, you know, alcohol does tend to wander off as the time goes on. But I do think there is something about the way that the wines are integrated that just is easier on the digestion.
I've always also wondered if just the polyphenolic content dropping out of reds makes them
I think it's
easier on the system.
more digestible. It's easier for the body. And you're right. I mean, you know, I have the privilege of drinking the greatest wines of the world, of all sorts of ages. And it's true. If you drink great wine with age, which is perfect maturity, I mean, I love it because you can drink a lot more of it and you feel good.
So here's the result of the poll. So the question was super simple. Do you prefer old wines, young wines, or any wines? So 30% said old wines, young wines, 8%. Okay, any wine, 62%. Well, that's interesting. That's interesting. What question concerning the consumers nowadays? A lot of people are looking for instant gratification. Is that a reason why some people are trying to go towards more, you know, producing and selling the younger wines? Is there an influence of the consumers on what the industry is doing?
The industry is for cash flow reasons. That's very simple. Sell their wine because they need the money. Otherwise, they would be gonna sit on the wine, you know, for a very long time, because it's a lot of money. You know, those who can afford it, they do it. But there's very, very few of them who will just bring out currently the 2005 or 2010 vintages. There are a few families who can afford it, but not many can.
Yeah, but I also do think, and I'm speaking definitely for an American audience here, but I do think that in the last 20 to 40 years, we've developed a wine consumer who's just used to drinking younger wines and actually has developed a palate around that and enjoys them. And I've had the experience on multiple occasions where older wines have been brought out and people say, oh, there's something wrong with it. It's spoiled. It's not good anymore, because it is into the tertiary characteristics. And there's not the same education around older wines understandably, because there aren't as many of them and that people don't have access to them. But, you think of all the, the main critics and publications are all usually talking about current vintage. So the vast majority of people are reading about current vintages, maybe 1 or 2 years ago. But there's not a whole lot of education and information around older wines and drinking them and enjoying them.
I think also, certainly in the U.S., the vast majority of wines are purchased and drunk within a day or two of the purchase. I mean, that's. But if you separate out for, let's say, classified growth Bordeaux, it shifts that equation quite a bit. I think the statistic is something like 92% of American wine in the U.S. is bought and drunk, literally on the way home from the grocery store or something. But a large percentage of wine in the U.S. is supermarket wine. I mean, it's when you separate out for what quote unquote fine wine, then you start to reach an audience that at least might be interested in aging the wine if they have the capacity and time for aging it. I think also, I think it's easy to underestimate that people buy a bottle of wine and they're excited to drink it. It's very hard to take it and put it away for 5 years and not drink it. And if you buy a case, that works well. But if you buy, and a lot of people come to Napa and they buy 2 bottles of Jaime's wine, and you know what they want to do? They want to go home and drink one of them because they're excited about it. It fulfills that excitement about the wine.
So if you
and Ray, that's actually a really good point too. Just in that, what we're talking about right now is already like hugely rarefied air in terms of the entire market.
Yeah.
So because you're not going to be aging a box of wine.
Actually, my entire cellar is full of boxes of wine, and I'm standing by that.
Die hard.
Actually, this being said, I've never done it, so I stand corrected. It may be a really great way to do things.
It's all rosé too. I'm just going to point out.
Awesome. Hey, you know what?
Because I know you're drinking old vintage.
Bun is like one of my favorite wines. So
true.
One recommendation is what my wife told me years ago is when you want to really age some wine, and if you have a cellar, hide it. Because when you're drunk and you go down and you start rummaging around and say, oh my God, I really just wanted to try this wine. And the next day you said, oh my God, what did I do? Why did I open this bottle of wine? Obviously it happened several times. So now I'm really hiding them behind everything I can do. So just leave the bottles you want to drink, without impunity out. And the other ones, just hide them away or just put them somewhere where you can't have immediate access to it.
Although be very careful, because I have a friend who has a wine shop in New York, and he told me one of my favorite stories, which was there were these 2 young men who came in with an empty bottle of, I believe it was a 69 Margaux or Latour, and said, hi, I need to buy a bottle of this. And he said, yeah, no, that's not going to happen. Like, he said, no. We took it out of my dad's cellar. We just have to replace it before he gets home. No, do you have any idea what you've done?
What about the notion of living for today, though, and just wanting, why suppress yourself and hide things from yourself when you know you're going to enjoy it?
Because you'll enjoy it more later. It's the marshmallow experiment, right?
Yeah.
Isn't it part somehow of the mystique of wine, that aging process in which, you let it take its time, and it's part of the, the romantic aspect of the wine part?
Pointing is when you age, it happened to me. You age the case, and I followed this, you open a bottle, it's too young, you continue, and you arrive to the last bottle and you say, my God, the wine is perfect now. And that was your last bottle. That is really pissing me off,
It is true though that I get emails every now and then from readers, I guess, who have their grandfather had a bottle of Chianti from the 1960s, and they found it in the attic, and they want to know what it's worth. And there's this assumption that because it's old, it's both better because it's wine, and because it's old, that it's better and worth something, which obviously is not the case.
No.
For most wines, and before I got in wine, I worked in the rare book business, and you would always get people coming in with old Bibles saying, I've got this really old Bible, it's undoubtedly worth a lot. And the immediate only thing you could say is, well, the most printed book in the world. It's just not that rare, you know. And so there is this something about wine that the idea of age makes people, you know, that they do have this idea that wine is supposed to be aged, that it's, you know, it's better if it's been aged, which is not true of all wines.
Well, and you bring up a good point too about cellaring. I mean, it's all well and good to have an old wine, even if it could potentially be wonderful and great when it's old. If it's been kept above the stove for 40 years, then it's probably not so much.
Yeah.
So in the industry, is it going to go towards providing more and more younger wines, or keeping the old wines with them so that they release them only when they have aged properly, for not people to, you know, store them and keep them home?
Yep.
What is the trend right now?
Came out with that. They only release vintages that they believe are ready, and so they're not actually in sequential order because they believe that some years become ready earlier than other years. And I mean, it's a great idea. It's wonderful for consumers because even though yes, they're paying a premium, but Latour's taking on the job of perfectly cellaring the wine, so you know you're getting something with great provenance, perfect provenance. But yeah, to Akash's point, I mean, if you don't have Monsieur Pinot's buckets, I think it is a very difficult thing to finance.
But you know, honestly, you don't need to go to Pinot's level. But I mean, you can look at the Trimbach family. I mean, they are not at the level of Pinot by a stretch of imagination. But they release their wines. You know, 2012 vintage has just been released. 2013 has just been released. So they sit on it, and then when they, you know, when they top cuvées are ready, that's when they release it. And that's the case. I mean, okay, you know, you can go to other wineries like Vega Sicilia, they do similar things. But I think that overall, Antoine, your question being that I do believe that there is definitely a tendency of drinking the wines younger. And that is because the lead time, the pace at which we live life today is so much faster. And we have no time for anything, and people have no time for anything. And the young generation even have less time for that. And they have no, as Ray pointed out, they have no space to do that. So they get the bottle, they do it, they open it, they drink it. And Philana is right. Live for today. Maybe it's not the greatest experience of your life because you don't know what it's going to be like 20 years from now. But you know what? You don't know what's going to happen 20 years from now. So you might as well drink.
You don't know what's going to happen tomorrow.
Right.
Well, and even though there's a lot more wine being made in the world, there are a lot more wine consumers as well. So I think it's just, it's structurally changed the industry to what it used to be.
Yeah. So but then, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I have noticed, and in California particularly, that there are more wineries, at least to their wine clubs, selling library releases. That has become a standard thing as opposed to an unusual thing. That a lot of wineries have library releases that are 10 or 12 years old or something like that. And partly that's more wineries keep back wine. I mean, it's a cost to keep back wine because you could have sold it, but it's interesting. And also, I mean, what Akash was saying, totally true about you know, Trimbach or Hugel both do old releases. Grand Reserva Rioja, you know, is 6 years right there, and many of them release it late. I've done pieces where I've said, if you want to try older wines, there actually are older wines in the market that you can find that have come straight from the winery fairly recently, and you don't have to keep it in a cellar for 10 years. And there's So you keep the young ones. Sorry, you keep the young ones for your daily consumption, and then you keep the older bottles for the very special occasions, something like that.
Well, but I think, Ray, what you're noticing is something that's happened because of places like Heitz and Burgess, among others. I think we're finally realizing, because the Napa industry is relatively young, we're actually realizing that, oh my gosh, these wines from the 50s, 60s, 70s are absolutely extraordinary, aged beautifully. And so a lot of wineries are deciding to keep a little bit back to create a library and be able to do library releases, because all of a sudden we realize that we can do it and it tastes good.
Okay. So good, young, old, as long as the wine is good and you have it in a great company, it's always great. Before we leave, your thumbs up and thumbs down for the past 3 weeks, the next 3 weeks. Let's start with Jamie, the birthday girl.
Oh my gosh, my thumbs up. Definitely my party on Friday. It was hilarious. I created all these spaces so people could spread out and not be next to each other. And everyone was in the kitchen on top of each other, like so happy to be together again. So yeah, birthday party or super spreader event, you tell me. But nobody has declared COVID as of yet, and it's Thursday, so I feel like I'm safe.
So it's good. So you're safe. You're home safe.
But it was really magical. It was wonderful, and to see so many people in my new home was a very amazing thumbs up. And my thumbs down is honestly the continuing situation in Ukraine. I think it's horrendous and needs to stop now.
Ray?
Thumbs up. I went to World of Pinot Noir in Santa Barbara a week ago or whatever. Big wine event, a lot of people there. Everybody was extremely happy. It was nice to be doing wine seminars for an audience that was actually in the room again. It was
human beings. I can
human
see
beings together having a good
you.
time. I mean, it's quite, and wine is social, and it's as much as this is social being on Zoom, it's a pleasure being around a group of people. And so that was a definite positive up, I would say. And then down, and I mean, I don't even really have a dog in this fight, as it were, but man, the price of gas in California is high. I mean, New York is normally the most expensive place on the planet, and you guys have us beat by like $1.50 a gallon. So that was
a hybrid.
that was a shocker. They didn't offer me a hybrid at Hertz. Very annoying. I think, or someone else took all the hybrids.
Cycling, it could be an idea.
So
electric or hybrid.
Yeah, I'm going to cycle around Santa Barbara County from now on.
Akosh?
So my thumbs up and thumbs down is basically the same story. I had a conversation with an old friend of mine who I've known since 1993, who is stuck in Kharkov in the east of Ukraine with his wife and being shelled on every hour, every minute. And that's kind of like the thumbs up and thumbs down in one, because thumbs up is that he's alive. But we had to interrupt the conversation because he had to run into the shelter. So I have, for the first time in my life, and I hope I'll never have to do it again, I posted on Facebook images that he asked me, that he took himself, his videos about the neighborhood where he lives, about burnt out houses where there's no military objects or anything else. And he asked me to put it on Facebook and spread the truth so that people can forward it back into Russia, so that people can see what's going on. So it was a very emotional day today, but you know what? He's still alive. So that's a good one.
That's a good news. Thank you, Jaime, Akosh. And Ray, we'll see you in 3 weeks on April the 7th. Now, before we go on to License to Taste, we're going to take a small break. You would think they are immortal, the Rolling Stones, Beast of Burden. taken from the music selection of our special guest, Philana Bouvier. Now we're on to License to Taste with Tanisha Townsend. So a bit of a more mellow mood, Canon in D major from Pachelbel by the London Symphony Orchestra. As the world starts to realize the importance of Ukraine for wheat, sunflower, and a few more things, we were kind of curious to see what is the wine industry, what are the wines from Ukraine, and our wine encyclopedia, Tanisha Townsend, has been on the job to tell us more about it. Now, just before you start, I'm just going to run a very quick poll to get the impression of our audience, and we'll look at this afterwards. The floor is yours.
I'm going to answer this poll too.
Go ahead.
There you go. Submit it.
Yeah.
Yes. So in my research and in my studies, was looking into the wines of Ukraine and then the grapes of Ukraine. They have 29 native grapes.
29?
Yes, 29 varieties. Yeah, I can't pronounce those, so we're not going to do that today.
It's okay, so no worries.
Yeah, so I was like, we're not going to do that. So just know, if you would like to look that up yourselves, we can send you the link. But I was like, I'm not going to embarrass myself this evening with that. So what I want to do is highlight a few wineries so you can get to know the people behind the scenes of Ukrainian wines. So one is Me.Antoine Vineyards, and this one I came to know of from Jane Anson. She posted about this. And this winemaker, Lev Golitsyn, he built a cellar of 7 underground tunnels capable of holding 25 liters of wines. This is from request from Tsar Nicholas II. He is often remembered, Lev is, as the father of modern winemaking in the Crimea, having cultivated nearly 600 grape varieties. So Me.Antoine was actually nationalized in 1922 after the Russian Revolution, and it was protected under a 1936 law. Stalin also safeguarded the winery from Nazi pillaging and looting, removing 60,000 of the most prized bottles to secret locations. And the vineyard was also protected from the vine pull scheme under Gorbachev in the 1980s that tried to curb alcoholism in the Soviet Union. Today, the vast estate has been bought by the Yuzhny Project, a subsidiary of the Rossiya Bank. And the Kharkiv Human Rights Protection Group has reported that the winery has been plundered in its slow privatization after the Russian annexation in 2014. Oops. So that's Me.Antoine Vineyard. Next is Prince Trubetskoy Winery. And since the end of the 19th century, with the laying of the first vineyards and the construction of the chateau by the prince, the winery has come a long way. Riesling Rhine, which is what they call this, back in 1900 won the Grand Prix of the Paris exhibition. And now this wine receives the highest awards in competitions. They have vintage wines developed back in 1949, and those are their like business card, their calling card, their thing that they're known for. And in 2004, the winery created some new developments, and the world's best grape varieties were planted, and the state-of-the-art winery was built. They grow grapes that we know of, not Ukraine varieties, but Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Malbec, Shiraz, Aligoté, Sauvignon Blanc, Riesling, and Pinot Blanc. So things that we know. Okay. Next, there is a wine brand called A&W by Stakowski, and he was actually a world-renowned tennis player. He was Serhiy Stakowski, a tennis player from Ukraine, and so that's why he named the wine A&W. He decided to master winemaking at the end of 2015 after working in France and learning his craft there. He rented 22.5 hectares of vineyards, and then he prepared the soil for more than 2 years, planting Merlot, Saperavi, Pink Traminer. Then he irrigated, prepared the vineyard, And now Stokowski's wines are one of the most beautiful and well-groomed vineyards in the region. And they had their first harvest in 2018.
All right. Now, what is amazing is that, kind of unbeknownst to, I would guess, to some people, they have a long tradition of winemaking.
Absolutely.
And actually, Eastern Europe as a whole has a huge tradition of winemaking.
Mm-hmm. And that's not something you think about when you think of wine. When you think old world, you know France and Italy. You don't think Ukraine, you don't think Serbia, you don't think Bulgaria, Croatia, you don't think any of these places that do have a rich and long history of making wine.
Yeah, let me share the results of the poll. So the question was, were you aware of Ukrainian wines? And yes, 40%, no, 60%. Would you be inclined to try Ukrainian wines? Yes, 93%, no, 7%.
Of course, this group said yes, they'd be inclined to try it. These are, our group is experimental. They'll try it if you offer it. So 93%, yeah.
Is it difficult to find in Europe? I know I was trying to see some places where you could potentially buy Ukrainian wines, and I didn't really come up with something. Were you able to find something there?
It is very difficult to find it, but I find that to be the case with most Eastern European wines. I think if I was outside of France or say outside of Italy, it might be easier, but finding things that aren't French in France is difficult. Something as simple as Portuguese wines, I don't have an easy time trying to find those. So things from Ukraine, Croatia, Serbia, Bulgaria, like those are all wines that are hard to find.
Okay. Akash, you're still there. Do we find Ukrainian wines? Are you aware if there's any Ukrainian wines in London, in the UK? If you hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you. To be honest with you, I have tasted Ukrainian wines, funnily enough, not in London, but in Italy. And it was interestingly enough brought over by Georgian people who basically they bought winery in Ukraine, and they brought their traditions over there. And the wines were something I've never really experienced. I only tried one winery, so I don't have a massive perspective on it. But one thing is for sure, I don't think that at the moment you go into restaurants, you can find Ukrainian wines, but I have a funny feeling if that thing ends at some point, you will.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure you will.
Pretty sure of that too. Thank you for the insights. Tanisha, we are going to listen to something specific, but before that, I just want to put you in the mood, So on the music of George Gershwin, An American in Paris. Now, this is your wine minute. It's your take on The American in Paris. Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay, here we go.
I'm going to go back to my typical rant style because this came up on social media. So you all who live in France, who have been in France, know of the store Picard. It's frozen food. And right now they have an American promotion. And so for their American promotion, it's all the foods that they think that Americans eat. Well, they have a pastrami waffle sandwich. They have a vegan burger that's green at the top. They have some nacho cheese bites and things like this. I'm not sure that the French think that Americans have a food culture. We don't just eat junk food. We do eat regular food in America. It's not just Snickers and Pop-Tarts and fluff and all of this, but that is literally what they think we eat. When I go to American stores like The Real McCoy or In Good We Trust or Sweet Escape, it's all like junk food. And like we do eat regular things. I promise we do. And not pastrami on a waffle sandwich.
That's your minute? No, really.
Yeah. No, Picard is life. I love the place.
You're in France. La France, c'est le maître de la gastronomie. It's the place.
Oui, j'ai compris, mais
yeah, no prejudice. We should embrace every culture and whatever they have to offer.
I do, and I love French food. But when you say American food, I'm thinking and it actually made me think, do we have an American food culture? Like, what is American food? When other people think of American food, they do think, oh, it's Pop-Tarts and hamburgers and hot dogs and corn dogs. Like, this is what is on offer. So that made me just think, like, what actually is American food? And what do I thinking, like, when I go home, what do I eat? And all the food I miss at home is all food from other cultures.
Interesting thing to look into. What are your thumbs up and thumbs down?
Thumbs up. I was nominated for a Wine Travel Award for the brightest journey as a wine influencer. And I need votes, so I'm going to send you all the link. I'm gonna
Yes,
put it in
of
the
course.
chat
We're
and then
gonna,
give it
yes,
to
we're gonna triple
Antoine.
vote. We're gonna go through different IP
Vote for
addresses
me.
and say.
So that's the thumbs up. The thumbs down is this is, you know, we'll keep things light. Yeah, that pastrami waffle sandwich, that's a thumbs down. Or no,
Yeah.
you know what? Picard has a grilled cheese. I can make a grilled cheese. I don't need you to sell me a grilled cheese. I can do that myself. So yeah,
Tanisha.
I think some of the things there. So,
Yes.
yeah.
Thank you very much. We'll see you in 3 weeks on April the 7th. And now, last but not least, have a drink with me with our special guest, Philana Bouvier.
To be loved and love at the highest count means to lose all the things I can't live without. Let it be known.
To be loved by Adele. As usual, most of today's soundtrack has been chosen by our special guest, Philana Bouvier, and will be available as a Spotify playlist very soon. Philana, what a marvelous pleasure to welcome you on the Wine Hour. Cheers again to your champagne.
Thank you so much. What a pleasure. I love the music aspect. It's nice.
It puts in a mood. It makes a different mood.
It's a nice way to weave in the conversations.
Yes. If the audience has any questions, you can put them in the chat. You can raise your hand. We'll put you audio or video, whatever is convenient for you. While we were preparing for the show, you mentioned that Demeine Estates is the place you want to stay. I would call that the happy place for you. But the road to this happy place was not that easy. What would you say the key factors to your success have been?
Thank you. That's a great question. Definitely, I'm extremely resilient. It was a very tough road, extremely tough. So you have to remind yourself constantly to be around very strong people to give you great mentorship. And I think the key factor is believing in yourself that you can do it. You have to pick yourself up and know that there are going to be hard days. And those days are going to be, some days are really, really, really tough. And you have to be able to overcome that fear and have the confidence that you can get through those tough days.
And what was your driver to keep that confidence and to keep on going forward? Because not going into the details, but it must have been very hard.
Yes. And that's what I really, one thing I have to tell that, and it's so great because I'm looking at the screen and there's so many people on the screen that I know and have had the great honor of just, I think the wine business brings great people together. And I think for me, it's hard to kind of explain how hard it was because it went so quickly. I look back at my time and it was during the time when I was building my career, it didn't feel like it, but it does go by quickly. And you just have to ensure that you have to believe in yourself and just make sure that you don't listen to the negative. If you start listening to the negative, you'll begin to believe it. And it's really important to focus on your strong mental health and to ensure that you don't let anyone in mentally, because it can mess with you. And it can also prevent you from success in a lot of ways.
And the people around you probably are extremely important, the supporting people around you.
Yeah, I have a very tight circle of people in my life that I rely on. And it's important who is around you, because you need to have the support of your friends and your family around you. And I think for some that may not know me, obviously, I didn't have a family when as I was coming up through the business. And so I had to really rely on people that I chose to be in my life. And you make mistakes, right? I think there are times where, there's a great saying, my girlfriend taught me this, is you trust until you can't, right? And if you come up the way I was brought up, you do make the mistake of not trusting immediately, right? And you say, well, I'm not going to trust you until you earn it. But that's really not the way to go. You really want to trust until you can't. And for me,
is it
because it's about the kindness that you can. Kindness is a gift that you give, but also you receive as well.
Is it because corporate America has been very tough and it somehow teaches you to be more than cautious with whom you're talking, what you're saying, who you're dealing with, who you can trust, who you don't?
Yes. I mean, this, I think so anyone that's been in corporate America knows very well that you have to play, unfortunately, the politics, which is why a lot of people they step out of the game, right? And they decide to start and become entrepreneurial and they do their own path and they dictate their own path. Because why would anyone allow a group of people to tell you your worth? That's the challenges of corporate America, is you have people that it's ego, right? They get to a certain level. It becomes very political. They don't want you talking, to like, you're an executive VP. You can there's a chain of command. And as I was coming through up the ladder with, both the wholesalers that I've been with, I was actually known for not following the chain of command, which got me in trouble. It did get me in trouble because I would challenge the status quo. But when you challenge the status quo, you also have to be prepared for the consequences, right?
Were you?
There were times where I was not. And I made a conscious decision to actually step out of the game. That's where Demeine Estates came in, because I had already played that role for so long. And you get to a point in your career where, you can go very high. You can achieve all the levels of greatness that I think people love about being an executive at a very high level, that people, I think they're thirsty for that kind of leadership and being able to be a part of a big company. But then I think for me, it was about affecting culture. And I wanted to affect culture in a positive way. And I wanted to be in a company and be part of a company where I can create something with an amazing group of people. And if anyone knows, my boss is Carlton McCoy. He's one of the most amazing, compassionate leaders of our time. He deserves everything he has and more. He's taught me a great deal and continues to teach me about leadership. And he's a phenomenal person to work for. Yeah. It was the best decision of my life.
I want to come back. We're going to go to Demeine in a second, yes. But I just want to come back to one thing about your previous life. At the time when you were climbing the corporate ladder, what was for you the definition of success at that time? When you were, playing the game, being in the politics and whatever was needed to be done to climb the ladder. What was the definition of success at that time? And then afterwards, when you talk about Demeine, I'm going to ask you that question.
That's a great question. And I'll take it back a little bit further. I grew up on my own, right? I had an extremely chaotic young life. And I think for me, when I was working in a larger corporation, for me, it was about recognition, right? I wanted to have a seat at the table. What defined success for me was just having that seat at the table and making sure that I was invited. I was almost, I think when I was younger in my career, I wanted to be invited to the table so badly. And I was upset that I wasn't, right? And it wasn't until further in my career that I was able to gain the confidence that I didn't have to ask anymore, right? And that I had earned that position to be there. But for me, I was obsessed with, and I mean this, genuinely, I think I thought that was what was important, was that I could just be at the table with the rest of the corporate board. But what I realized the definition of success for me is that you want to really dictate your own future. You want to be in charge of your own destiny. You never want to put that in the hands of somebody else.
Yeah. But when you were at the table, finally, how was it? Was it really what you expected?
It wasn't that great. Because, I am honored and grateful for the time and my experience, because it led me to where I'm at today and who I am as a leader. And so I will always use it as experience and education. And that's very important. And I honor that time greatly. But when you get there, obviously, I think from my personality, you always want more, right? It's this ambition that you have inside that you always strive for. But that ambition comes from when I was a little girl wanting to have love in my life, wanting to be recognized, wanting to lead. And so that comes from kind of a deeper place. And that's, kind of what drives me today still.
So you got to see that table. You realize it wasn't that great after all. So what was the pivotal moment that made you decide to jump off the game and make your own?
Yeah, well, I think for me, it wasn't that I was grateful to be at the table, and I was thankful I got there. And it wasn't that I didn't think it was so great. It was that I was surrounded by people where my values changed, right? And what the pivotal moment for me was 2020. 2020 was a big moment because I realized, the pandemic really affected everyone differently. So I can only speak about my experience. And I never like to project any kind of whether it's positive or negative onto anyone. It's just my experience. And what I realized is I wanted to work in an environment, in a culture where I could change with the team and affect positive culture and truly be right? If you think about driving diversity, you don't want it to be a check in a block. You want it to be actionable and live and real, and not just creating committees to create committees and doing things because a company wants you to do it, but you don't really, and these committees are being created by corporations, you don't even report into the CEO. So it's just like there as a, okay, it's nice to have, but are they really making change? And so for me, the pivotal moment was 2020. And I'm glad I made the decision because mentally I had made that decision. I said to myself, it's time to leave. And once I had made that decision, everything fell into place, which was, for me, I consider myself very fortunate and lucky because I had the opportunity, of course, to meet Carlton. And once I met Carlton and understood, wow, there is a leader out there that's not the corporate world that I was 20 years with the wholesaler, if you think about it.
That's a long time.
20 years just like in the machine for
That's
20
a long
years.
time.
It's a long time.
It's difficult to take a step back from that as well, because you're part of it. Your body and your soul is part of it. For you to be able to just say, okay, hold on a second. This is not exactly what I wanted. This is not me. Eventually, this is not me. And to be able to say that and to say, stop, I'm out of here. I don't know many people that have done this.
It's a risk, right? I took a calculated risk, which is really, for me, was very important because I wanted to make sure I was making the right move. But I'm so glad I did it. And I think it's important to take risk in life. I think that's important for anyone in going through a career change, to identify and to evaluate where you are in your life and you make the move. I am someone, my philosophy is you only live once, right? And why not do it now? But that's me. I don't project it onto, that's just who I am as a person.
Yeah.
So you moved on to Demeine Estates. Big change, surroundings, culture, everything. What would you say your main mission is? We can talk about the business side, but I want to talk about, because you were talking about changes, the changes that you didn't see happen in corporate America, in the corporate world that you were in before. People were doing their meetings and checking the boxes and, okay, we've done our share and just forget about it. Change. Why?
Yeah, so well, I can go both ways. You know, for Demeine Estates, it was, you know, it's the brainchild of Carlton McCoy, really. You know, my place here is to execute his vision. His vision is phenomenal. We wanted, you know, he wanted to create a company in which, you know, I joined later, but when it was initially, the conception was to represent the greatest wine regions in the world, and to be not only you know, one of the best importers in the world, but also to represent the domestic owned wineries of the Lawrence family, and to have fun, right? I mean, it's about enjoying the work. I mean, think about it. If we have the opportunity to enjoy who you work with, like, how great is that, right? It doesn't even become work anymore, because you have the ability to understand who you want to work with and who you decide to work with. And it becomes, as we say in Hawaii, ohana, right? They become your family.
Yes, very important. We're going to keep on talking about the mission, about what you want to achieve. We're going to talk about dream it, live it.
Yes.
After this next musical break.
When the soul cut the deed at the reception, a glass of wine and a hand, I knew she was gonna meet her connection. At her feet was a footloose man. Now you can't. What I said? Now you can't. Good. Now you can't. That's right. But if you try sometime, you just might find you want to stay. True love. That's right, sister. And I went down to the demonstration to get my fair share of abuse. See you back on the field of frustration. And if we don't, we gon' blow a 50 amp fuse. Yeah. And now you can't always get much more. Now you can't always get much more. Now you can't always get much more. But if you try sometime, you just might find you can watch your day.
In your playlist selection, you
It's a
included
great song.
You Can't Always Get What You Want by the Rolling Stones. Why have you chosen this song? Because you can't always get what you want?
I can't always get what I want. I wanted to, I saw a comment which I loved, and by the way, I'm so thankful for being on this platform, and I wanted to thank everyone for listening. And I think I wanted to speak from my corporate experience, and I agree. There are some fantastic corporate companies out there that do some wonderful things. I came from the wholesaler. Wholesaler is very archaic. It's better today than it was before, but 20 years ago when I started, it was extremely archaic, and being the only woman in the room. And it was very different back then, especially as you come up through the ranks. Very, very different. But for other corporate companies, it's definitely a much more advanced than the wholesaler. Much more.
So that is to clarify that point. And the song. Why have you chosen that song?
Oh, the song. Well, because it's true. You can't always get what you want. And I think a good leader, if you talk about leadership or even in just personal experience, sometimes if you're going after something and you don't get it, it's okay to say, I didn't get it, right? So I love the Rolling Stones. I mean, there's nothing, I think, for me, brings back some great memories.
Yeah, I remember 1990. I saw them in France. Yeah, that was a good time. Yeah, a good time. So now you're at Demeine Estates, and you have that mission of bringing change. Now we're going to talk about those changes, but the first thing is why is it so important to you to bring on that mission?
Well, I've been in the business for 20 years, as I mentioned before, and worked in the wine business for so long with all kinds of companies, right, across with importers and distributors. And so we have the ability here to create something from, with a fresh piece of paper, from scratch, with a clean piece of paper, and learning from, I think, all the challenges and failures of other companies and being able to do things a little bit differently here, which makes it very exciting.
Because you've seen so many things in the wine industry that you have that opportunity to right the wrongs?
Yes, well, that for sure. And look, we're not, I say this, this is important, is you learn from people's mistakes, right? And it's important that, for us, our approach is we have very strong relationships. People are first in our company, and that's the most important. And our partners obviously, we want to make sure we pick the right people to be our partners. And we have a wonderful community here, of just with our winemakers and, all of our vineyards, with the Lawrence family, with what Carlton is building. It's a joy to be around people that you can spend time with and have dinner with. Those are the things that are important to us.
How has your definition of success evolved?
I remember you asking me.
Yeah, so what is it now?
I've thought about this. I do not know yet what my definition of success, because I am still driven. And for me, having a really fantastic team, which I have today, and the fact that we are building something so special is what is successful for me right now. For the future, building out Demeine Estates is I think the more is to come with that. And it's very exciting because we are growing at an extremely fast rate. And we'll be announcing new producers very soon, which I'm excited about. And I know Carlton is as well, and more to come on that. So on the business on the business front, Demeine Estates will be and is one of the greatest importers of the world. This is who we are, and this makes me excited. For me personally, I think the best is yet to come. I have not hit the height of my career yet, but it's not about me. It's about our people. I step back actually a little bit.
Yeah, but what about Demeine Estates? What would you like it to be recognized for? Is it being the fine wine leader in the US, bringing this beautiful portfolio of fine wines from all over the world, and being the agent of change that is bringing things differently in the way the wine industry functions? Which one? If you had to choose, let's make it a bit complicated to start with.
That's true, but I also think that you shouldn't have to choose.
Okay.
You can have it all, because it's important to be an agent of change takes a team. It takes people, it takes collaboration, and it takes a team. So it's the success of Demeine is upon our people. It's how badly they want it too, and that's very important. In addition to that, also, being a fantastic importer and being good at what you do, right? Being a great operator, having the values, having the being able to have the skill sets intact, and being able to call on your distributor partners and doing it the right way, and showing up and having those relationships. That's also very important.
If anyone in the audience wants to ask any questions, you can put them in the chat. You can raise your hand. We can put you live on or audio or video. You are championing an initiative called Dream It, Live It. Live It. Sorry, my European accent. Can you tell us a bit more about it?
Yes, in fact, I love Tish Wiggins is on here, and I see her, and everyone. I don't know if she can show her face. I'd love to see her. She's fantastic. So, oh, I'm looking at it. So Dream It, Live It is an intentional, action-oriented initiative that demonstrates a core belief that, of course, Demeine Estates and our business is done with people, and Superior Business is ethical, genuine, transparent, and inclusive. So we are not simply inviting inclusion, we are driving it through diverse backgrounds of our team members and partners who bring different celebrated perspectives to the table. This initiative is about highlighting shared value organizations that will benefit from a platform and providing visibility for those partners by collaborating and cultivating opportunity, offering access and providing education. Tish Wiggins is one of our first partners. She has a company called Tish Around Town, which is a small business and founded and run by her in Texas. And she leads immersive trips throughout the country, but in wine regions that provide unparalleled access and to wine visits and just travel through her eyes. So we're working with her, and she's spending time with our team, and she's able to bring people out here to Napa Valley. We have the first Women in Wine event, which is very exciting. And I don't know if we can have Tish. I'd love for Tish to talk about it, because she is Dream It, Live It.
Hello. Do you have a question for Philana? Something that you died to ask before, but didn't have the chance to. Now is your chance. Yeah, you're muted.
Oh, hello. How are you guys doing?
Hello.
Greetings from hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Can you? Okay. Hello. Greetings from Atlanta, Georgia, because I've been traveling from Texas today. But greetings from Atlanta, Georgia. And if I had one question to ask Philana that I haven't had opportunity to ask thus far is, what was your true vision for Dream It, Live It? When I know we initially talked, and you told me your thoughts and your dreams about where you wanted it to progress to, but what was that driving force to say, this is what I want to be able to do and bring to Demeine Estates?
Oh, that's a great question. Thank you, Tish. I think that goes great, because there was a comment that was made by Jeremy, and I want to make sure that I answer this correctly. It's an opportunity for everyone to participate, right? This isn't about Dream It, Live It is an opportunity to ensure that we open up our network and people can utilize, who we are, and opening up and ensuring that businesses are successful. And we want to help, especially, wine entrepreneurs become successful and be there for them as a mentor, and also to educate them when it comes to anything that they need for their business. And that's what Dream It, Live It is about. I mean, you dream it, right? And you live it. And that's been a big part of who I am as a person, and being ambitious and being able to go after your dreams. And that was the initiative that, our team came up with here, not just myself, but also our marketing teams came together, and we wanted to create an initiative that was for everyone. And that's important.
Yeah, inclusion and bringing education to people is so important. Thank you, Tish, for the question. And I think you have a fan in Tanisha Townsend. Let's just put some stuff in the chat.
Hi, Tanisha.
I love that Tish is on here.
Unfortunately, we're getting close to the end of our conversation, but before ending it, as usual, to conclude, we finish with the Pivot questionnaire. So it's the first thing that comes to your mind. Are you ready? You're muted.
I'm sorry, ask me the question again.
So I was saying that I'm going to ask you questions. The first thing that comes to your mind.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. So what is your favorite word?
Passion.
What is your least favorite word?
No.
What's your favorite virtue?
Loyalty.
What's your favorite quality in a man?
Well, I think all people are created equal. So I don't know if there's something in a man that everyone is created equal to me.
So what's your favorite quality in people? Because I was going to ask you what's your favorite quality in a woman afterwards. So I guess it's the same thing.
I love a great sense of humor.
All right. What wine would you use to describe yourself?
Champagne.
Mm-hmm. What is your favorite curse word?
I don't have one.
Oh. for the 19 shows we had, some people said, no, we don't have it. They always have one. There's always something that comes out, whatever it is.
No.
Okay, fair enough. What sound or noise do you love?
I love the sound of the ocean.
What sound or noise do you hate?
Snoring.
What plant or animal would you like to be reincarnated in?
Lion.
If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
That's a good question. Welcome, I guess.
Welcome it is. Philana Bouvier, thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. I appreciate everyone listening in.
So this concludes the wine hour for
Nice
today.
to meet you.
Thank you for listening. Next show is on April 7th. Until then, drink in moderation, be well and safe. Faith always. We leave you with I Drink Wine by Adele.
Become a version of a person we don't even like.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It was so nice. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, the audience. Thank you, everyone. What a great music selection. It was very nice.
When I was a child, every single thing could blow my mind. Soaking it all up for fun, but now I only soak up wine. They say to play hard, you work hard, find balance in the sacrifice. Yet I don't know anybody who's true